Hello, everyone. I'm Keith DeStone, and this is HeroesX Office Hours for version 13 of HeroesX. And we're discussing the questions for hours 10 and 11 today. I should mention, as always, I'm here with Greg Nagy and Sarah and Janet and Elen. So thank you for joining me. The hour 10 discussion question is, and this is again in Greg's voice, I, Greg, have thought for a long time that the story of the land of the Lotus Eaters in Odyssey 9, lines 82 to 104, gives us a good way to understand the symbolism that we find embedded inside the Homeric Odyssey. But maybe I am oversimplifying? Feel free to agree or disagree. What are folks saying about this one?
One comment from a participant is, well, Odysseus' men who ate lotus flowers lost the ability to think. As a result, they were unable to return to the ship and could not return home. In other words, losing nóos, does it make nóstos impossible then?
Yes, I think so. I think that participant has nailed it. No nóos, no nóstos. And wow, that was 4 words. No nóos, no nóstos. And you could say that's what the Odyssey is about. You could.
So that someone else has been picking up or trying to compare that episode with some of the other episodes where there are delays. On the island of Calypso, Odysseus can't stop thinking about going home. But what about when he's on the island with Circe? It says he stays there a year. He could have left at any time. He's not being kept there. He's got a ship, unlike on Calypso's island. But it's almost as if, even though he wasn't turned into swine, it's almost as if he seems to have forgotten. Has he lost his nóos in some way there? What's going on?
Oh, that's a very good question. I think in a way he has. To put it another way, the companions, if you'll excuse my pun, went whole hog, whereas he went semi-hemi-demi-hog. I like that.
And that's even though he had the protection of this mysterious herb that Hermes gave him to protect him.
Yes. I like that. And also, it's not quite as clear in the case of Circe that that it's dangerous to have sex with a goddess, all the precedents, and we know that from Odyssey 5, all the precedents lead to the death of the mortal male who has sex with the immortal female. So it's not as if he's giving up some kind of eternal sexual bliss. He would be doomed to die. Not just lose his nóos, but lose his life if the relationship with the goddess is in any way continuous. It has to discontinue. Look what happened to Orion. Look what happened to so many other characters.
So for Odysseus, he has to lose everything to regain everything, and this reclaiming, losing his nóos, is part of to tie in the story. He has to regain his nóos. So who helps?
I like that. Regain, rebuild, and after all, in fact, I like the way you said it. That it is a regaining, a return to your right mind. Can I put it that way? And after all, the number one metaphor for nóos is waking up in the morning. just as the sun returns in the morning. And I love to play with that tradition that was current with Indic priests, that when I wake up, it's because the dawn goddess wakes me up. But for the dawn goddess to wake up, I have to utter prayers for that cosmic event to happen. So it's a chicken and egg relationship. I pray for the dawn goddess to rise, but the dawn goddess gives me the consciousness to pray. And this kind of chicken and egg relationship can only happen within a cycle. And that is also what both nóos and nóstos are all about. This consciousness is cyclical. But going back to the contrast between Calypso and Circe, in the case of Calypso, she's in a cave, so the symbolism is more overt. And with Circe, the symbolism has to do with coming full circle. I am convinced that the etymology of kirke, it does have to do with circle.
Going back to,
coming
since
full
you're
circle.
talking about cycles, it makes me think maybe that's why Odysseus stays with Circe for a year. Is she's just
Oh, actually, wow. Keith, you should write that up. That's wonderful. Wow.
Thanks.
You should write that up as an annotation.
And then when he's
as an
with
annotation.
the true goddesses,
Make a note of that, dear
nobody
Keith.
forgets. They still know where their home is, but when they are at the lotus eater with the lotus eaters, then they forget where the home is. So there's a difference too, because if you forget where your home is, as you write in H24H, you have no nostos.
Again, the formula applies. No nóos, no nóstos. If you black out or blank out, I can use either extreme white or extreme black. Whether you black out or blank out, there's erasure, and there's a suspension then of cycle.
Is there any etymology to the word lotus, Greg, that plays into this?
Unfortunately for me, no.
Okay.
It's probably not Indo-European. But you notice when I say not Indo-European, that's not saying it's not Greek. If I could play with how to use the word Indo-European, I think it's very important not to equate Indo-European with Greek. You sometimes hear or read that something is not Greek simply because it doesn't have an Indo-European etymology. But that's not a good way to look at it, because the Greek language has absorbed so many linguistic elements that do not come from the Indo-European branch of languages.
Like Sarapon, we talked about in an earlier hour.
Yeah. And so circling back to your question, dear Keith, I would say that lōtós, the Greek word, is a Greek word, but it doesn't have an Indo-European etymology.
Not even a synthetic one, as you like to say.
Not even a synthetic one,
explain
exactly.
a story.
The way a name like Achilles is morphologically transparent, or at least half transparent.
Right. Well, we better move on to the next question here. Hour 11. The question is, in your reading of the Odyssey, do you have a sense of completion by the time you reach the end? Or do you have a sense of incompleteness, as if the story had not been fully told? Either way you answer this question, please try to back up your answer by citing one detail that you think supports your line of thinking. That's an eternal problem.
Yes.
The ending of the Odyssey.
Yeah. Well, one participant, he feels there's a sense of completion, but he would like to know more about what happens to Penelope and Telemachus after.
Wouldn't we all? Did I ever tell you all that when I was, I think, a sophomore at Indiana University, I took a course on Greek history, and Mr. Snyder, when he got to the part where we start thinking about the end of the Odyssey, he said, well, the Greeks could never leave a good story alone. Well, I wouldn't quite say it that way, but it is true that there are versions of the Odyssey narrative where Odysseus actually has a son who is conceived by Circe, if we may come back full circle, no pun intended. And that son is named Telegonos, which means somebody who's begotten far away from where? Far away from Ithaca. And Telegonus accidentally kills his father, Odysseus, and then marries Penelope. Okay, I think it's a better question to ask why our Odyssey stops where it stops, because the story keeps going. It's like the Baron von Munchausen. As long as he's alive, he'll tell stories.
So that element of telling stories has actually come up elsewhere in the forum. Trying to understand, we know that explicitly that he tells lies to Penelope, for example. The master narrator tells us that he does. So then we see within his own narrative to the Phaeacians, he tells us that he told a lie to the Cyclops about where his boats were. He said, no, we lost all our boats. So how much of what Odysseus' narrative is can we trust? How much of that is true? So you get to the end thinking, well, some of it must be true. We've invoked the muse at the beginning. It must be the master narrator. That must be true. But how much of his own narrative can we trust? How much of that is true? And is he carrying on spinning these lies?
Well, here's where I would try to step back, maybe not just one step, but 2 or 3 steps, and maybe re-examine the way you and I use the English word lie, and how in ancient Greek, the verb pseudomai simply means to get it wrong. But the question is, who gets it wrong? Is it the listener, or is it the person who's encoding the message? And I would argue that with a character like Odysseus, he speaks in code, and those who are, how to put it, intellectually, morally, and emotionally inadequate will not get it, but those who are, all 3 of those, will get it. And so it's not so much lying, it's concealing the truth. A germ of truth, a kernel of reality, and how those rules of the game are set up depends on the performance. So we have to imagine, well, what is the performance situation of the Odyssey? It's presumably for those who already accept that you have to have those 3 qualities, and who then observe how this character, whom anthropologists would describe as a trickster, goes through these various stages in his life experiences from A to Z, or could I say from A to Z back to A, and then you make a judgment on the basis of the context of the performance. And I can see situations where the Odysseus story is told in a carnivalesque way. And that would mean that the trickster aspects, which are tricky, would be accentuated and the aspects that have to do with social order as represented by a just king would be commensurately adjusted.
In the beginning of Odyssey, we hear about a man who has many turns, who knows many languages, and he doesn't come up right away. We hear about his name later on. The end is kind of alluding that he fades away. He might have many different turns. We do not know the end, and I think that's the beauty of Odyssey.
It is. And the way the Odyssey begins, it's clear that it's a never-ending story, but our Odyssey will still put an end to it. And one way that the end of our narrative is predicted is the visit with Tiresias, the noetic hero who has nóos exceptionally even when dead. And when you look at the prophecy of Tiresias, that prophecy takes us to a point in the Odysseus story that is clearly beyond our Odyssey, and is kind of a circular model as opposed to the linear model of a narration, where if you're narrating, you have to narrate in a line, and then your audience will eventually tire, and you end. Or you say, we'll take this up the next time. But you still have some kind of closure in the context of performance, but not in the context of what is being performed. Very tricky, but that's what you expect about a traditional narrative about a trickster. And the trickiness is not necessarily bad as long as it's framed within a narrative structure, within a myth-making structure that has a positive social message, which is that the just will be rewarded and the unjust will be exposed and punished.
All right. Is there anything else we should discuss from this week's?
Everything. but here we are. We've reached the end of the line. Here we are. We've reached the end of the line because our sessions have to be linear, I guess, but couldn't we say we'll come back to this?
Exactly. This time of performance has to draw to a close, but we'll be back telling stories.
And we will be noetic. And I really compliment the beautiful questions that the participants were thinking about, and how these beautiful questions were mediated so beautifully by, may I put it this way, the three muses.
Well, I can't wait till next time. Thank you all for joining us.